Knicks family, what's poppin'? It's your boy. I got my man Tony Crow on the line, and we're going to talk about 3 teams that this 2019-2020 New York Knicks squad possibly compares to. So let's get with it, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the G.
Tony Crow, what's poppin' with you, my brother?
I'm chilling, Sin. I'm excited to get this topic talked about. The first team that came to my mind was the Atlanta Hawks from 2014-2015.
Yeah.
That team definitely overachieved. I believe they finished first in the East. They definitely won their division. 60-22 record. And then if you look at that roster, they really didn't have any stars. I'm not even sure if they had an all-star that year.
As a matter of fact, Tony, that team, the previous season, they were 38-44. Then you get to the 2013-2014 season, they were 38-44. Then you get to 2014-2015, they exceeded expectations. They were 16-22. Yeah.
22 game increase. That's crazy. But if you look at that roster, they had notable names: young Dennis Schroeder, Jeff Teague, Paul Millsap, Al Horford, Elton Brand, Kent Bazemore. So Brand was at the twilight of his career. Al Horford was probably just making a name for himself as a defensive guy. Paul Millsap, I mean, he probably didn't even peak yet. So, I mean, if you pull up some points per game, their leading scorer, 16.7, Paul Millsap. Kyle Kuzma, 12 points. DeMar Carroll, 12 points. Al Horford, 15. Dennis Schroeder, 15. Dennis Schroeder, 10. Al Horford, 15. Jeff Teague, 15.
Yeah, and that sounds like when you're talking about this current Knicks team, so many players on the roster. Offense should be spread out, and we should be able to get points from different areas on the floor, from all over the floor, which would mean you may have one guy like a Julius Randle, who gets his 21 to 24 points a game, but everyone else should kind of be around that 13, 14, 15 points a game. Guys that you would expect to score, which should make the team, hopefully make the team kind of lethal on the offensive side of the floor. And looking at that Hawks team and the way that they were able to jump and leap from 38 games to 60 games, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's an incredible jump, 22 game difference. And it probably has a lot to do with the chemistry of the team, being able to really fit everybody together, you know what I'm saying, and work together as a team without having one overwhelming superstar, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at it, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in double figures. The next closest guy is 7.8 points. That's Mike Scott. And then everybody else around 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, 4.9. So 5, 2, 3, and 1.
Yeah.
That type of production I expect from our current roster. I expect at least 4 to 5 guys around 10 to 15 points and Julius Randle to lead the way at somewhere over 20. So, I mean, it's astonishing when I thought about it, when I started looking into it. Um, and I based it off memory initially, just that Atlanta Hawk team. Like, man, they won the East. How they do that? Like, so I mean,
Yeah.
you never know if things fall into place. The second team that I thought about, was the 2010-2011 Chicago Bulls. So what made me think about that was watching Dennis Smith Jr. this offseason and thinking of who he compared to as a explosive point guard, because there's
Right.
not many of them. He's not quite a Russell Westbrook, but Derrick Rose came to mind, and I remember that 2010-2011 season. He kind of broke out. I believe that was his MVP season. 22 years old. Made a good significant jump from the previous year himself.
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
wasn't really.
I think he jumped from like 20 to 21 points a game to 25 points a game. And if Dennis Smith Jr. could jump 4 to 5 points a game this season and 1 or 2 assists this season, I mean, that'd be huge. That'll be huge for the Knicks, man. Huge.
Yeah, and how old is Dennis Smith? 20, 21?
I think Dennis Smith Jr. is 21, yeah.
21. Derrick Rose was 22. I mean, Rose wasn't really considered the best passer, but his assist numbers was there. Same with Dennis Smith, 5 point something assists a game. Like, he knows how to pass. But then, I started to look at the roster, and they didn't have that. That was the year Rose became a star. But going into that year, they didn't have any stars. They had Atkins, Keith Bogut, Carlos Boozer. I believe that was his first year there. So they wanted to pair him with Rose. Ronnie Brewer, Rashad Butler, Luol Deng, defensive guy. Could score too. Taj Gibson, young Taj. James Johnson, Kyle Kuzma again. John Lucas III, Brian Scalabrine, Kurt Thomas, C.J. Watson. So I looked at their record, and 62-20.
Right.
They led the East that year as well.
Exactly. In the previous season, they were 41-41. So they took they jumped 21 games. You know what I'm saying? With a roster that had some young players, some veterans on the team, and some guys who were budding stars who were just coming into their own as stars. I think Carlos Boozer had been in the league for 8 years. But he did have a big season. I think the previous year in Utah, I believe. Right. Of course, Derrick Rose took a huge jump. And then you had a young Joakim Noah on the team, like you said, a young Taj Gibson on the team. So you had guys that were budding. Kind of like this season's New York Knicks, guys that are budding and we hope are going to take that next step forward. Yeah, I can see where both those teams took jumps. They weren't expected to take jumps, and they did it by packing the roster with good players and having some young budding players that they thought could possibly take take their next steps in their career. And I think that's exactly what the Knicks have done. Exactly what the Knicks have done. And I think looking at the way that the team is constructed now, and if they can remain consistent, right? I mean, and this is the problem, because the way that the team is constructed now, they have a lot of players that could get minutes on most teams in the league. But some of these players also have, just 1 year contracts, basically 1 or 2 year contracts. But if they can stay consistent with some of these players and really stabilize the team, players that they like, that they really feel can be a contributor going forward, they keep. They find a way to keep them. Then I could see this team, because they're starless. We're hoping that Julius Randle elevates himself to star status, but they're starless right now. But when I look back, you look back at those two teams, kind of similar to what this team is now. And we're not saying that the Knicks are going to win 60 games. We're just saying, they're kind of similar in the way that they constructed their roster, with players that could be budding, but having a lot of players that can produce, right? I go back and I look at those Detroit Piston teams way back in the day, right? I'll go back to 2001 and 2002. They kind of went through the process of adding talent on the team. Now, that season they were 50-32. All right, the season before that they were 32-50. Okay, and of course they went through some roster turnover. All right, the next season they were 50-32. All right, but they had some key players still on the team. Ben Wallace, Jerry Stackhouse was on the team. Right, Corliss Williamson was on the team. They had some key players on the team from the season before, so that they can maintain some stability. They kept going. They kept growing. The next season, they were 50-32 again, but they added some more players to the team. They added Richard Hamilton. They added Chauncey Billups. Right, Tayshaun Prince was a rookie. Mehmet Okur was a rookie, right? So they brought in some good rookies. Right? And then finally, they were 50-32 that season. And then finally, the next season, 2003, 2004, they were able to bring in Rasheed Wallace. They went through a little bit more roster turnover, and bringing in some players as they continue to tweak the lineup. But then they brought in Rasheed Wallace. Right, and when I look at that team from that season, because Rasheed Wallace at that time in his career, he had been in the league for 8 years. He was. I'm not gonna say he was. He was. I don't want to say on the downside of his career, right? But he probably had plateaued at that point. Okay, but they had no big time stars. They were a team that was filled with very, very good players, right? So I'm going to go down the list of players on that team. They had Chucky Atkins, Chauncey Billups, Eldon Campbell, Hubert Davis, Tremaine Fawkes, Darvin Ham, Richard Hamilton, Lizzie Hunter, Mike James, Darko Milicic, Mehmet Okur, Tayshaun Prince, Bob Sura, Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, Corliss Williamson. Right, so they were a team that didn't have a lot of stars, but they had a lot of good players, and they were able to come together as one group. Rasheed Wallace came in, I think, halfway through the season and kind of put them over the top. And I think that's where this Knicks team can go as you move on in the future. You keep adding pieces. You got a lot of good players, and players that don't fit what you're doing, you get rid of them, trade them, let their contracts expire, whatever it is, and then you tweak. And then when the time is right, you have the assets, you have the stability, you have the structure and everything in place to bring in a guy like the Pistons did with Rasheed Wallace, who put him over the top. So I see, where it can go from there. Now, the Hawks teams and the Bulls teams, they weren't able to add that final piece to put them over the top. Obviously, with the Bulls, Derrick Rose continued to get hurt year after year. The Hawks, they kind of meddled there for a little while. They were never able to get over the hump or add a piece to get over the hump. But the Pistons did. They were kind of, they were winning 50 games every year. And then finally, Rasheed Wallace was the guy to put them over the top, and they did it, from a team standpoint. And I think the Knicks right now are constructed so that they could do the same thing. You know what I mean? They could keep that team, that team atmosphere going. And maybe you don't pull in a big super duper star, but you bring in someone when you're at that point that puts you over the top. You know what I mean? And I think we're set up to do that. What do you think, man?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree 100%. The one thing I was noticing as we spoke about these three teams, and which is going to be vital for the Knicks, is we're going to have to become a defensive team. Defense is going to have to be a big part of what we do. Mm-hmm. All three of these teams were good, if not great, defensive teams.
Right.
We have a couple of defensive players. We're gonna have to utilize them, and then a couple of new guys and a couple of old guys are gonna have to step up, and show that they could at least be average defensive players,
right?
If not above average.
Yeah, and when I look at the Bulls, right, from 2009 to 2010, their defensive rating was 11th in the league in 2009, 2010. But in 2010, 2011, they were first. When I look at the Atlanta Hawks, they were 13th in 2013 and 2014. Remember, their record was 38-44. And then in 2014, 2015, they were sixth in the league in defensive rating. Right, so both of those teams took a major jump. Now the Pistons were always a good defensive team, right? But even the Pistons in 01-02, right, when they were they were 50-32 at that time, their defensive rating was 8th in the league. Right, the next season 02-03, they were 50-32, but they're getting better. Right, they actually made the Eastern Conference Finals in 02-03. They lost to the Nets, but their defensive rating was 4th in the league. And then finally in 2003-2004, when they won the championship, their defense was rated 2nd in the league. So, that defensive rating is going to be the key, definitely going to be the key for the Knicks to take a step forward and like the Hawks, like the Bulls, both those teams saw themselves win 21 or 22 more games. You know what I mean? If the Knicks win 21 or 22 more games, that's going to put them around 38, 39, 40 games. You know what I mean? Which is a huge turnaround, from what they were last season. So the Knicks are in prime position to do it. They're in prime position to do it. Yeah. Well, Tony, hey, man, I appreciate you bringing this topic up. You know what I'm saying? And
no problem.
We're going to go ahead and get out. Anything you want to add before we jump out of here?
My usual, man. Shout out to the chat. Yo, Black, it's time. Sim, keep doing your thing. I appreciate this opportunity.
All right, man.
MBK exclusive.
No doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you guys. Subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell. You'll be notified anytime I go live, drop a video, or post in my community section. I'm out.